Hi, Julie.
Hello, my friend. Here we are. Another
Oh,
Sunday. Fun day.
Sunday, fun day. Good to be with you, day.
Yeah, good to see you. I've been
Hmm,
looking forward to today.
me too. I've been looking forward to the last few days of what poem is going to find me for today.
Nice.
And I went on this quest to find the poem, and the poem that I was looking for, I could never find. And I'm not kidding when I say I spent several hours looking for this poem that was by a friend's husband. So I'm searching and searching for this poem, and it takes me this long way to um, a journal that I had when my father was dying 5 years ago, right now. And I was reading this, and there was some poetry in there. I'm going to do one of these poems. And none of them were speaking to me like they did. So I keep opening to what's trying to find its way to me. And I remember this poem and this poet that I was introduced to by Kim Rosen, who wrote Saved by a Poem. And the poet's name is Naomi Shihab Nye. And the poem is Kindness. And I took this long road to this poem, Kindness, and I was rereading what Kim Rosen had to say, and she reminded us the origins of the word kindness come from the origins of the word kin. So, in your tribe, in your group of people, the ones that you are alike with. And I thought, oh, I went through this big circle of missing my father, missing my kin, to come back all the way around to this kindness poem. And I don't know if it makes sense to anybody, but it made perfect sense to me when I got there.
Oh, that's pretty special that your dad, you know, was on your a heart and
Yes.
sent you on this journey.
And
Uh,
this is what it feels like. This was him intervening. Um, and then this poem, I was not familiar with the poet Naomi Shihab Nye until recently. Um, and then I giggled because she lives in my backyard in San Antonio. And she teaches at the Texas State University.
Nice.
I love in her biography, it says she is an all world poet. And so she travels around the world and also teaches around the world via Zoom. And she's been a Zoom teacher long before any of this.
Wow. So
And
maybe you two are kindred spirits.
there you go. She's quite interesting. Her father is Palestinian and her mother is American from St. Louis. And she grew up traveling, and they spent part of her childhood in Jerusalem and part of it in Ferguson, Missouri, and part of it in Texas.
Wow, that is some interesting territory.
Yes. But it gets more interesting because both of her parents, although respected their family's religion, they respectfully stepped away from their family's religions.
So Muslim or Jewish and Christian?
Her father was Islam,
Okay.
Islam and Christian.
Hmm.
And that they both said, respect your religions, but it's not for us. And that the children, so Naomi and her siblings, were not raised in a religion. They were raised to find that thing that speaks to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very progressive parents.
I just thought of this space to find that thing that speaks to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
What's fascinating too is I don't know what the conflict situation was for them at the time period that they were in Israel. And that
right,
Ferguson, Missouri is not known as a peaceful necessarily place to live.
right.
And then I don't know where in Texas they found themselves. Those are sort of like very, hotbed kind of areas. And then Texas, like
Texas, yes.
yeah.
So no surprise that she was a religion major in college. That she was on this epic quest to find that thing that speaks to her. And the thing that speaks to her was Zen Buddhism. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So she wrote this poem, Kindness, and she wrote it while she was in Colombia in 1978. And it is infused with the energy of the indigenous population. And I don't know everything that was going on in that part of the world at that time, but she speaks about, and the poem speaks to how the indigenous population was kind of run off their land. And so the things they had to do to earn a living. So here's one of the things about this poem um, is the ambiguity in the poem, and that there are beautiful poetic passages that are infused with disturbing images. Mm-hmm. And it's this ambiguity that also spoke to me because of what we're going through right now. And especially, there's so much, but this ambiguity of, is the country open or not open? And what people are being asked to do, what people are being forced to do, what people want to do, what people don't want to do. We've talked about this. It was easier for me when it was the country's closed. Yeah. But now we're in this, and we're seeing this surge of violence around this ambiguity of everybody is trying to stand in their own place, and tensions are really high right now. So, kindness. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I wish I had my bowl. It's packed away.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, maybe let's take a nice long deep breath.
Exactly. Maybe a nice om.
Om. Okay.
You've done a toning for a while?
Yeah.
Okay. How about we take two nice long deep breaths, and on the exhale of that third breath, we om.
Oh, sounds lovely.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to lead us, or you want me to lead us?
Oh, okay. First breath.
Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved. All this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore, only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread, only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. It is I you have been looking for. It is I you have been looking for. Julie, I stumble every time I read this poem. I stumble on um, before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. I stumble, I want to leave it out of the poem. I don't want to look, I don't want to have to experience that sorrow.
Which I think is why it's so poignant and why it has to be in this poem, because we can't look away from that. And it's back to that idea of this, and in the beauty and the kindness that often is stirred in people under extreme duress, painful times in life, really unfair actions, all of that. There's also this ugliness. There's the shadow and the light, the contrast, and
And the reverse,
and the
that
reverse. Yeah,
this sorrow
yeah.
is kindness.
And it makes me think of this research project. It's a longitudinal research project called Adverse Childhood Experiences. One of the things that is highly protective for people, it's children who have come out of really, really awful situations in their home life,
Mm-hmm.
is if there is one adult in their life, a neighbor, a school teacher, a grandparent, whatever, but one adult in their life who is kind to them, who tells them, "I believe in you," who says, "You're talented," whatever, just those very, it seems like not much, that's protective.
Right.
That's enough for somebody who's lived through really horrendous kind of circumstances to develop that like resilience, that ability to sort of rise above, to experience the pain, but somehow not have it define them.
Right.
Um, and that's kindness. Like you never, you never know sometimes how an act of kindness has done something for somebody that you would have never really thought was much of a big deal.
Right.
But for that person, it was.
For that person, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I was I was rereading parts of the book saved by a poem,
Mm-hmm.
and rereading Kim Rosen's experience of this poem. And she has this great passage about kindness. Um, and she says, kindness is not a state, but a natural grace that arises on its own when you have been intimate with the most painful of human experiences.
That's really powerful because sometimes I have experienced that. People who you would imagine like have the right to be sort of bitter and like cranky and like, turn their back on humanity
Mm-hmm.
can sometimes end up being the kindest people I've ever known.
Yes.
And I've often wondered what's they're like marked with some sort of pixie dust or something. But no, it's that they've done it hard, so they know what it feels like to have had an act of love or kindness
Right.
come their way.
Right.
So that's probably magnified in them the value of that on some level. Or wow.
Right. Right.
And that, yeah, that's a I like I'm gonna have to like read this again to myself and kind of sit with this because yeah, it's one of those poems that does kind of get you in the solar plexus a little bit.
It does.
Um,
Yes. I
some of the
keep
imagery.
I keep having this image of riding on this bus, and it's hot outside and you're kind of miserable riding on a bus full of hot people in the hot summertime,
Mm-hmm.
and driving by the Indian in his white poncho on the side of the road. And all of a sudden, these things that were making me, the heat making me physically uncomfortable really is not a big deal anymore. And this is my vision of riding the bus, that I begin to look around the bus and the people on the bus and noticing the little things on the bus, noticing the little acts that are going on of a mother feeding a child, or someone standing up so another person could sit for a while. And this is what happens to me when I read this poem is I'm on the bus. And
Ah,
at first I'm just like, oh, it's hot and sweaty. I want to get to where I want to go. And then I see this man in his white poncho dead by the side of the road, and everything shifts. And all of a sudden, I'm really not that uncomfortable. And I look around the bus and I begin to see all these little acts of kindness that are happening that I may have just overlooked. I was overlooking until I saw this on the side of the road, this shadowed, dark part of our world that we don't want to pay attention to. But when you look and really experience it, then the rest of your world is expanded as well. Does that make sense?
mhm. Yeah, and there's something in the line about, this is somebody that is loved, has a family, has people, you know, worried about them,
Right.
concerned, waiting for them to get home, whatever. Yeah, that's
It's a use of a word where she says how he too was someone who journeyed, and that word too, if she had left out that word, it would be, and how he was someone who journeyed through the night with plans.
yeah,
But that kept him disconnected. And when she
right.
says he too, oh, he's journeying just like me.
Yeah, he's a fellow traveler. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
We are connected.
yeah. We
Yeah.
are connected. That interconnected thing that we, um, you know, humanity's been pushing that boundary
Right.
for a long, long time as the individual, and individualism has become a much more dominant sort of ideal that I can only speak in Western culture, my rights, my land, my property, like if we have really, like we've really worked that one, like um, you know, the reminders, especially now going through what we're going through with
Right.
COVID-19, and let us not forget what we're going with just our environmental concerns. This is, as one of us goes, so goes the next person. Like, this is not something we can make our rights, our individual rights, the dominant.
It has really been highlighting
Yeah.
the I and the we,
Mhm.
and almost demanding that we remember that we are a we, and everything that I do affects the we.
And affects our future generations.
Yeah.
And whether or not, you decide to bring life into the world by having children or not, there will be future generations coming down the pike. And the decisions we make now, whether we want to hear that or not, or, whether we have the kindness to care, it's going to matter. Yeah.
So
We can't afford to not look.
we can't. I
Yeah.
love that, Julie. We cannot afford to not look. Yeah.
Mhm. Because they too are going to be affected. TOO.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. We cannot not afford to look.
Mhm.
We have to look because we too are affected.
We have to look in those scary corners, and we have to look at our habits and really think about our habits individually, and what's something that I can be changing up in my world. And if everybody is looking in those corners and cleaning it up
Cleaning it
and
up.
sharing and not feeling judged or afraid to, are finding their kin in this whole thing, because that's the beauty of something like the internet. As we're going through what we're going through,
Right.
we can talk to our friends in New Zealand, who have the best prime minister in the whole wide world, who is a woman, by the way. I adore this woman. Like we can learn what some people are doing and how it's making a difference, and how they had to tweak and retool, and how it may not work exactly the same way where somebody else in another part of the world is, but the best of the idea can be cross-pollinated and turned into something workable.
Right.
That's the magic of kind of, this and possibility. Like,
And
I haven't lost
sorrow
hope.
and
I just feel like in this time of turmoil and transition, and Gaia basically having the last word.
I gave you plenty of opportunity. Yes.
What can come out of that?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So this light and shadow, light and darkness, this sorrow and beauty, and in sorrow, little acts of kindness,
Mhm.
that they go together.
Yeah.
We
I mean,
cannot
think
not.
about think about history and all the stories we have heard. And stories are how we internalize things like kindness. Somebody can tell you about it and tell you you need to do this, but there's nothing like telling you the story of an act of
Right.
kindness that somebody did for somebody else, that just like sears it into your heart more so than the head.
Right.
But we tend to remember those stories.
Stories.
And I just think about through some pretty dark historical times, including some pretty dark current history that we are experiencing, there's also these really beautiful acts of kindness that help us remember our real humanity.
Yep. Yep. Everywhere from that painted rock that I see on my walk to the rows of healthcare workers that are, um, applauding when someone leaves the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
These little and big things, they all add up.
Yeah.
They all add up. Oh, thanks for letting me share this. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was a powerful poem to share today, and I love the journey it took you on, and I love that it started with you thinking of your dad. That's yeah, that's sweet. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, it started with thinking of him, and I have no doubt that he left the breadcrumbs for me to find this poem. Yeah. All right, my friend. Look forward to see what finds you this week,
Yeah, me too.
what you share with us later in the week.
Okay,
All right.
sounds
Have a
good.
great
Enjoy the
week.
rest of your day.
You too.
All right,
Bye.
bye.